Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 365 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Yeah, you heard it correctly, yo. 365 episodes, yo. That is an earthly year of episodes. That's a lot. That's a lot. But hey, we're still going. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, now we ask you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. I'm sure throughout the duration of this episode, I'm going to specify and continue to reiterate the fact that we are still early in this NFL season. It is week 2 just ended, and tomorrow, week 3 begins with Thursday Night Football. But in these first 2 weeks, you're starting to see things that could manifest into bigger things as we barrel down towards the end of the season, as we continue this seasonal train that we are of the NFL season. And where I want to start is America's team. I want to start with the Dallas Cowboys because the rhetoric, the conversation that you're hearing around the Dallas Cowboys right now is this is the best team in football and this is the best shot that the Dallas Cowboys has or that they've ever had since, of course, their championship windows were wide open with Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith. This is probably the best Cowboys team that we've seen since those iterations of the Cowboys. I don't remember, I think it was maybe 2013, 2016 or something where they went 13-3. But people are saying that this is the best Cowboys team that they have ever seen. And if you look at the numbers, you look at the statistics, it's very hard to refute anything different. It's very hard to not see where those opinions are coming from. They beat the Jets, 30-10. I know they beat the Giants the first week 40-0. They're obviously outscoring their opponents 70-10. They're just destroying people. And I understand where people are saying and why people are saying that this Cowboys team not only is the best team in football, but the best iteration of the Cowboys that they've ever seen. And we're going to talk about the New York Giant or New York Jets side of this in a second, but here's my take on the situation. The things that are clear 2 weeks into the season is that I believe my Defensive Player of the Year prediction, which was Micah Parsons, that seems to be a home run right now. In football, there's a conversation that is starting to brew, or let me say, it's been brewing for a while, but it's starting to get louder, and that is who was the best player who was the best defensive player in football. For the longest, it's been Aaron Donald, and it hasn't really been close. Yeah, you've had J.J. Watt, who obviously is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously one of the best defensive players we've ever had. You had Darrelle Revis, Revis Island. We've had him a couple years. But it's been Aaron Donald, and it's been Aaron Donald for a while. But when you look today, the conversation kind of stems towards Nick Bosa or T.J. Watt or now Micah Parsons. I apologize. When you look at this Dallas Cowboys team, for the longest you could say that, and what's usually said in football is you're only as good as your quarterback, and your quarterback is the most important player on your football team. And while we'll talk about Dak in a second, in fact, no, we'll talk about Dak now. Dak Prescott is extremely important, and to me, the key to if this team is a championship team or not. And that's saying a lot about this Dallas Cowboys team, especially coming from a Washington fan. But I'm not going to go as far as saying that this is the best Dallas Cowboys team we've ever seen. But what I will say is this Dallas Cowboys team is, at least 2 weeks in my opinion, the best football team in football. There's not much holes. In fact, I don't really know that there are any holes outside of one. But when we talk about this defense, you have Michael Parsons, you have Trayvon Diggs, you have Malik Hooker, you have Javon Curse, you have DeMarcus Lawrence, you have Stephon Gilmore, who is an incredible player, former Defensive Player of the Year. Offense, on Sunday, CeeDee Lamb had 11 catches for 143 yards. You just don't see that from one player that often unless that player is elite. And, of course, when CeeDee Lamb is on and when the Dallas Cowboys offense is on, he is considered elite. But going back to my first point, while Dak Prescott is probably the most important piece to unlocking this Dallas Cowboys championship potential, the best player on the Dallas Cowboys is Michael Parsons. And through 2 weeks, I think that it's very clear that Michael Parsons is the best defensive player in football. Again, and we'll talk about it throughout the entirety of the show, but we have multiple people that you can, of course, throw their name in the ring. But Michael Parsons has been the best player on the field in any football game this season. Early, but still, he is the best. With his speed, with his, relentless pursuit of the quarterback, with his tackling ability, his sack ability, there's nothing that Michael Parsons can't do. I think the only criticism that Parsons saw, especially last year, was his engine. Especially when you look at towards the latter half of the season, which I definitely want to see if things have changed. Last year, I'm not going to say he fell off a cliff, but he definitely slowed down from the output he was putting in the beginning of the year. And that really hurt this Dallas Cowboys team. I'm interested to see once we get to week 7, once we get to week 10, once we get to week 13, week 15, does he still have the motor that he has in week 2? I understand that it's very, it's almost irrational to ask someone to keep up the same energy for an entire season. But when you have a team this good and you're talking about their best player, that's kind of expected. When we talk about basketball, man, we expect LeBron James, especially prime LeBron James, young LeBron James, we expect him to play the same in game 1 that he did in game 64. Like that's the expectation when you're someone that great. And Michael Parsons is that great. I think that this Dallas Cowboys team is the best team in football right now. Now, again, and I told you this in the beginning, I'm going to continue to reiterate throughout this episode that we're only 2 weeks into the season. But with this 2 weeks, the Dallas Cowboys is the best team. Now, where is that hole I was talking about? When you look at the numbers, it's very hard to see a hole with this Dallas Cowboys team that have multiple interceptions. Again, they're beating their opponent 70-10 for the season at this point. Dak Prescott hasn't thrown, I don't know if he's thrown a interception yet. But it's this offense. And I know you look at the numbers on Sunday, 31 for 38, 255 yards against CeeDee Lamb, 11 receptions for 143 yards. Tony Pollard had 25 carries for 72 yards. I'm still holding out. I will say this. Their first 2 opponents hasn't come out the gate exactly how they wanted to, probably, and how we thought they would. Like the Giants. The Giants, we'll talk about the Giants a little bit later, but the Giants were almost, I think we're down 20 points against the Arizona Cardinals before they made their epic comeback. And we know about, Daniel Jones and the contract and what the team went through coming into the season was a lot. And of course, for the Jets on Sunday, we know with Aaron Rodgers and now you have Zach Wilson and how that offensive line, even coming into the season, really wasn't that good. And now you have Zach Wilson at the helm, But I will say that if they continue to play this, in fact, I'll say this, if they continue to play this way, while yes, I can concede that right now they are the best team in football, I think their offense needs to kick it up. Dak Prescott needs to play a little bit better. Their team needs to be a little more balanced. I think that they are the best team in football right now because of, their offense and everything. I'm not too sure if they can win a Super Bowl with this type of offense. Now, with this defense, yes. This defense, to me, is probably right now the best defense in football. You can argue with the 49ers, and maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we'll talk about them too. I just think that the offense needs to, the balance needs to be there. Right now, I think it's the defense is up here. The offense is about right here. I'm not saying the offense is bad, but it just hasn't matched the productivity, in my opinion. I know that's crazy when you look at, again, they've scored 70 points in 2 games, and it's crazy to think, what the hell? But when you look at, if you've seen both games and looked at both games, you'd understand that most of it is the defense and the turnovers. So, I mean, I'm not throwing shade at the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just saying I do agree with people saying that this is the best team currently in football. But until until you match the energy, or until the offense is matching the defense, it's going to be a long one. Let me talk about the other side of the football or let me talk about the other team on Sunday for a second. We know what the Jets are. The Jets know what the Jets are right now. The reason why there was such a worldwide gasp when they saw Aaron Rodgers go down is because, not just because, Aaron Rodgers got hurt and nobody really wants to see anyone get hurt, But the reason why there was like a worldwide gasp, or when I say worldwide, I mean like in the professional sports fandom realm, is because we know, or we've seen what's behind curtain number 2 when we talk about the New York Jets. Curtain number 2 is Zach Wilson as your starting quarterback. And Zach Wilson being your starting quarterback is the poster child to you're only as important and you're only as good as your quarterback. Because when you look at this Jets team, outside of probably their offensive line, this is a championship caliber team. This is a championship caliber defense. They have championship caliber players on the offensive side of the ball, but they have Zach Wilson as their starting quarterback. Now that Aaron Rodgers is out for the season. And I know that he took an experimental, innovative thing or procedure, and he could be back for the playoffs. I think that's incredibly irresponsible for Aaron Rodgers and for this team to allow him to come back. Because, again, I understand that the window for Aaron Rodgers is quite small right now, seeing as though his age and now with his injury. But the last thing you want to do is trot him out. I know that you have Cam Akers, who came back 5 months, I believe. And you have Adrian Peterson, who came back, and they're both running backs. And Adrian Peterson won the MVP, or I think comeback player of the year, one of those two. But no, I understand you don't want to punt on seasons, but no. But that's not what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about is Sunday. And the bigger picture is, even going into Sunday, you know your team. We fans, we know who the Jets are. And we know who the Jets should be with Zach Wilson as their quarterback, because we know Zach Wilson is not a good starting quarterback. He may have moments, he may have flashes, but he's not a good starting quarterback. And even in those moments and even in those flashes, he needs help for those moments to be moments and for those flashes to be flashes. We talk about the Garrett Wilson catch in week 1 against the Bills. No one talks about the fact that that was a bad throw. We're just going to talk about how incredible that catch was. Or you can talk about I think it was like 60-something or 70-something yard touchdown to Garrett Wilson. It was a slant, and Garrett Wilson just ran faster than the Cowboys defense on Sunday. I say all that to say this. You go into a game, and the object of the game obviously is to win, but to put your team in the best position to win. I don't think, even though it sounds pedestrian, but having Zach Wilson throw the ball 27 times is not the key to winning. Obviously, they lost 30-10. Your current best players on offense is Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and probably Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall was incredible game 1. And before his injury last year, he was the front runner for the offensive rookie of the year. Now, of course, you have the person that did win the offensive rookie of the year, and Garrett Wilson also on the team, but Breece Hall was the front runner for that. I understand that this is a passing league, right? But there's no way, when you have Zach Wilson as your quarterback and you have Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall as your running backs, that they combined should have 8 carries the entire game, especially when you have Zach Wilson as your quarterback. I understand you're down, but this defense is good enough to keep you in games even when you're down and even when your quarterback is Zach Wilson. The problem is, and the thing that you saw on Sunday, is the defense was playing incredible defense against the Cowboys, but they were on the field so long that they started to tire out. Well, when you go into the game plan, you say, we're going to run the ball down their throat. I don't know why you abandoned the run so quickly. They abandoned the run in the first quarter. There should be in no way, shape, or form should you have Zach Wilson as your quarterback and not run the ball more than you throw. So while I do want to say congratulations to the Cowboys for beating the Jets 30-10, I do think that a lot of the win was because of how good the Cowboys are, but it also a lot of the win is also because it was just poor game plan, in my opinion, from the Jets. You should never abandon the run when you have Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. I understand Dalvin Cook fumbled. I get that. But when you have at least Breece Hall, Zach Wilson should never have more carries than Breece Hall. Ever. And it ultimately doomed them because you're already starting behind the 8 ball with Zach Wilson as your quarterback, especially when you thought you had Aaron Rodgers through the whole season. So to do that and to abandon the run, just bad news. But congratulations to the Dallas Cowboys for beating the Jets 30-10. to 10. I know it's early. And I know that the Bears going into it. I know the Bears aren't a good team. Now, I thought with the departure of Aaron Rodgers, of course, leaving the NFC North, I thought that the NFC North was now wide open. And I thought that with Justin Fields and the new acquisitions that the Bears got, especially they spent almost the most money in the NFL this offseason on defense. Now, of course, you also have DJ Moore, and you have Claypool from last year. You have Commit, the tight end. I thought that this was the year where you would see a major jump. Not just from Justin Fields, but from this entire Bears organization. Because when you have a player like Aaron Rodgers in your division, it kind of, it's almost like, especially 2, 3, 4 weeks into a season, you kind of know, all right, we're playing for second. That's not the case now. But I say all that to say, the Bears are terrible. In every facet of the game, they're not good. It doesn't seem like they're coached well. It doesn't. Their defense is horrible. Their offense is bad, and we're going to sit on that for a second. Let me first say congratulate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for beating the Bears 27-17. And I do want to give a shout out to Baker Mayfield. I was incredibly critical of Baker Mayfield coming into the season. But on Sunday, again, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, shockingly to me, is 2-0. But he was 26 for 34, 317 yards, 1 touchdown. The Tampa Bay defense was incredible on Sunday. And Baker Mayfield was good yet again for another week. So shouts out to them. But I think this game tells more of a bigger picture about Justin Fields and this Bears team. You see, I am slow. In fact, I believe I am slow to quote unquote kill a player. And when I say that, I mean that, of course, for people that are listening, I put that in air quotes because obviously I'm not going to kill a player. But I feel, especially in football, a lot has to go right for a player to be good. Now, there are some players that are just, you step on the field and you're obviously the best player on the field, like a Michael Parsons we just talked about. Yeah, I think he'll be great in any team, any scheme. Patrick Mahomes, I do think that it definitely helps that you have Aaron and Andy Reid, but I think Patrick Mahomes would be great in any scheme in any organization. I'm starting to feel like I am wrong about Justin Fields. Now, shouts out to the great Dan Orlowski. I'm not putting alongside with myself, I'm not putting Sunday's loss solely on Justin Fields. I think when you run the same exact play back to back at the end of the game, which the second time, the same exact screen, the same exact formation, the same exact side, and I think you get a pick six the next, because I mean, there's no way when you're playing a veteran team, when you're playing a team that won a Super Bowl just a couple years ago, and mainly that same defense, you're not going to it's not even fooling them. You're doing the same exact thing, like Darren Orlowski, shouts out to him, pointed out. So I'm not putting this loss solely on Baker Mayfield. I mean, on Justin Fields. I do think that the coaching staff and his coordinating team has failed him throughout majority of his career. But what I am doing is putting the onus on Justin Fields, or putting what needs to be on Justin Fields. And that is, Justin Fields has not improved at all since coming into the league. Yes, he's had flashes. But when you're an NFL quarterback, I think almost every single quarterback has had flashes, right? Justin Fields has had flashes, and that's kind of why I wanted to be so high on Justin Fields, because I've seen him play incredible. I've seen him be great. I've seen him play again. I think they beat him, or he beat them. I've seen him beat the Patriots. I've seen him be the best player on the field. But that's just what they are. They're flashes. Justin Fields, at least 2 games in, has not seen the field at all. We're going to talk about another quarterback that hasn't really seen the field that well, but Justin Fields has been horrible. On Sunday, 16 for 29, 211 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. The Bears went out. Again, the Bears as a whole aren't good. They went out and spent most of their money on the defensive side of the ball, and their defense is trash. I'll be real with you. But I think what's more disheartening is I thought we would see in a jump, a leap from Justin Fields, and we've seen quite the opposite. In fact, it looks like through 2 weeks, he's regressed. Stayed the same at best. I don't know. The Bears are starting to look like the same old Bears. Now, I'm talking about the Bears that we've seen in recent history. Not, of course, the, Dick Buckus Bears. It's unfortunate how bad Justin Fields looks, because when you have, to me, a division wide open and you come out the gate, and it's one thing being 0-2, but being as bad as the or as the Bears have been and 0-2 is tough. And a lot of that is on the regression. There's a lot wrong with the Bears, but a lot of it is, in my opinion, the regression of Justin Fields. And I understand you're playing a good defense. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But, bro, Justin Fields, he hasn't been able to see the field all that well. He holds onto the ball way too long, which allows sacks, which allowed poor decisions. There was one famous play that's going around where he held the ball and it feels like he literally ran right into the arms of 2 defenders. I know it's 2 weeks in, but the hope, the small amount of hope that I had about this Bears team is, I'm not going to say completely out the window, but it's fleeting and fast. And a lot of it is because of how bad Justin Fields has looked. The next game I want to talk about is the Pittsburgh Steelers winning their first game of the season, beating this Cleveland Browns 26-22. I want to first talk about. Let me first congratulate T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt became the all-time Steelers leader in sacks on Monday Night Football, and he also recorded his first defensive touchdown. So shouts out to T.J. Watt. Shouts out to the Steelers for winning. The conversation today is around, obviously, Matt Canada, who is the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as we know, the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has been terrible. I don't think in Matt Canada's tenure, he does not have a 400-yard offensive game, whether that's running, whether that's passing. He has not produced. In fact, I don't think he's produced a 300-yard offensive game. And as highly touted and has, as much as I praised this Steelers team coming into the season because of how good they looked in the preseason, none of that seems to be here, at least offensively. None of that seems to be here for the Steelers. And I'm not here defending Matt Canada at all. I do think that Matt Canada has been a major reason why this Steelers offensive team, or the Steelers offense, has been stale to keep it to be positive, I guess you can say, has been stale. But when you have Najee Harris, who there's just no creativity to this offense. Najee Harris is not the fastest running back. You have him running out the shotgun. Like it's just not nothing. There's nothing creative about this offense for the Steelers. And I will say a lot of that. I know I'm not gonna say the void of talent at the offensive or the wide receiver position, especially with Deontay Johnson going into the IR, but you do have George Pickens, who did have 4 receptions for 127 yards, but 71 of that was on one play. Again, I don't think Kenny Pickett or this offense has had a 300-yard game. So I do want to place blame where blame should be placed with Matt Canada. He has, to me, not been creative at all and in this Steelers team that has good weapons, good pieces, just is inept at the offensive position. And I do think a lot of that is because of the Matt Canada scheme. But a lot of what we've seen, especially these first 2 weeks, and how bad the Steelers have looked, at least offensively, is because of Kenny Pickett as well. Kenny Pickett has been horrible. And I talked about Justin Fields just now and seeing the field. It doesn't seem like Justin Fields sees the field all too well. Well, the exact same thing can be said for Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett, he just looks lost a lot of the times. And it's a shame when you look. To me, you can clearly see the problem with the Steelers. The Steelers still have one of the best defenses in football. I just talked about T.J. Watt and having the most sacks or being the franchise leader in sacks. You still have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who I know he did go out and he had like chest problems and he went to the hospital, but he's out and should be okay. You have Joey Porter Jr. the second. He's really good. Like, you have good players. Alex Highsmith, Keenan Neal, Patrick Pearson, who I think he's kind of like over the hill, Patrick Pearson, but he's still doing his thing. Quan Alexander, and Cameron Hayward, he's out, but he should be coming back. It's definitely not on the defense. Now, week 1, you can kind of say it was on the defense. The defense wasn't that good. But the clear issue that this Steelers team has is the offense. Now, you heard fans talking about fire Matt Canada. I understand the frustration around them, but you also have to be clear. Kenny Pickett has not been good at all this regular season. And until he starts seeing the field well, and until he starts getting more comfortable in the pocket and getting more comfortable out the pocket, it doesn't matter how great this defense is. This is not a 49er situation. the defense for the 49ers is much better than the offense, but the offense is still good. Brock Purdy is good. Kenny Pickett has been bad. And again, until he makes a leap, this Steelers team is good. And I know I had them as a sleeper, but I also thought Kenny Pickett was going to be a lot better. I think this defense is incredible, and I think this defense and T.J. Watt in particular definitely has a case to be the best defensive player in the world and to be the defensive player of the year. But as far as team success, I don't see much of it with Kenny Pickens as the head coach. Or Kenny Pickett, I'm sorry, as the head coach. I mean, as the starting quarterback. Mike Tomlin's still an incredible head coach. But with Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett, I don't know what much to tell you as far as success-wise. But shouts out to T.J. Watt for being the all-time leader in sacks in Steelers history, and shouts out for recording your first defensive touchdown. Now let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. I've had a lot of people. I talked about the Cleveland Browns when I did my divisional breakdown, and I'm not going to say critical, but I was honest about what I see from the Cleveland Browns or what I've seen from the Cleveland Browns, especially last year with Deshaun Watson, and how it's almost irrational to think that Deshaun Watson is going to be the same player that we remember him in Houston, at least last year, because this is the first year since in like 2 years that he played. But I think Monday Night Football is where Monday Night Football against the Steelers, week 2, I think the Cleveland Browns season is over. Now, if we get a better Deshaun Watson, then of course that statement is not valid. Let me first send prayers up to Nick Chubb. He had a very gruesome injury to his leg, the same leg, and he pretty much had the same injury a couple years ago. He's out for the season. I hope for a speedy recovery. The way that I'm not gonna, if you want to go see it, go see it, but it's very gruesome, and he's definitely done for the season. I know it's been confirmed, but I didn't need Adam Schefter to tell me the way that his leg bent. It's over with as far as this season. And that right there is why I think that this season is over for the Cleveland Browns. Mostly because of Nick Chubb being gone, but the reason why that is such a huge blow, or it's a bigger blow than people think, is because we know how good Nick Chubb is. We know that Nick Chubb is widely considered one of, if not the best running back in football. But the greatness of Nick Chubb is able to balance out the poor play from Deshaun Watson. Let's be clear here. We know the contract Deshaun Watson has. And with that contract comes expectations. Expectations that Deshaun Watson has come nowhere close to meeting. Again, I understand that last year it's irrational to think that Deshaun Watson is going to look like he did 2 years prior in Houston. But this is 2 weeks in to this season, And Deshaun Watson has been horrible. He's not seeing the field well. He doesn't have the same zip on the ball. On Monday Night Football, he had 2 really questionable face masks. Like, dude, what are you doing? And this game was for the taking. This game was for the Cleveland Browns to win. The defense was playing great. I understand Nick Chubb going out was a big blow, but the defense was still good. David Njoku, the tight end, he was playing well. But Deshaun Watson was a huge reason why this team didn't win. Again. So for the people, and side note, bro, the comments and people that are saying how wrong I am about and how I'm being unfair to Deshaun Watson. How am I being? You are the highest paid player in NFL history. I understand that a contract doesn't necessarily tell what you're supposed to do, but what I am saying is that a contract does bold expectations. And when you're the highest paid player, I'm not saying you have to win every game, but you have to look much better than Deshaun Watson has looked. Deshaun Watson is the main reason why they're 1-1 and not 2-0. And honestly, the way that Deshaun Watson has been playing, it's shocking that they're not 2-0. In fact, it's not that shocking. This defense is incredible. But if it wasn't for this Cleveland Browns defense, they would be 0-2 with the quickness. And if it wasn't for costly turnovers, he threw a pick six the first play of the game. Now, you can say it hit the receiver's hands and it's the receiver's fault, but you can also say that Deshaun Watson threw it a little too far. Let's see. Like I said, it's week 2. So things can definitely change in an entire football season. But right now, Deshaun Watson has not looked good at all. And he damn sure hasn't looked like the highest paid player in NFL history. And the reason why I say this season is currently over is because I'm going off of how Deshaun Watson has looked and how Nick Chubb has looked and how the greatness of Nick Chubb is able to kind of mask and shadow the ineptitude that we've seen from Deshaun Watson this season. Well, Nick Chubb is out. He is gone. So now there's more pressure. Now, yes, Jerome Ford looked really good. 16 carries for 106 yards. But it's on Deshaun Watson. More than it was before Nick Chubb got hurt, obviously. And until we start seeing Deshaun Watson look anything close to, I'm not even gonna put Houston. I'm not even gonna put that pressure on Deshaun Watson. As far as getting back to the Houston days, I'm not even gonna put that on him. What I'm going to put on him is until he starts looking like a good quarterback, because he has not. Until he starts looking like a good quarterback, this Cleveland Browns season is over with. Especially when you see how the Ravens are looking and how you know that at any given moment, any given game, the Cincinnati Bengals can flip that switch. And when you know, yes, I just talked about how bad the offense is for the Steelers. Well, their defense is still their defense. It's going to be a long season if we keep getting this type of Deshaun Watson. And if this type of Deshaun Watson comes to play, they're going to lose majority of the time, especially when they play better offenses. So I'm not saying that the next game I'm going to talk about is the Chargers and the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans beat the Chargers 27-24. I believe in overtime. Or no, maybe wasn't in overtime. But what I do know is the Chargers lost to the Tennessee Titans 27-24. And the conversation coming out of this game is a conversation that we've been hearing for time and time again. It's just getting louder. And that is how hot the seat is for Brandon Staley and the conversation around Justin Herbert. Let me talk about Brian Staley first. No one questions if Brandon Staley, or is it Brian? It's Brian, right? Brandon Staley. I'm definitely making sure. I apologize, my peoples. It's definitely Brandon, right? Yep. I apologize. Back to the regularly scheduled program. No one questions if Brandon Staley is a good coach. What they question is, can Brandon Staley finish in big moments? Or can Brandon Staley win those big moments? Can Brandon Staley coach up this team to win close games or to win the big moment games? Because there's nobody that thinks that the Chargers don't have a talented team. The Chargers actually have one of the most talented teams in football. I understand Austin Eckler didn't play, but your wide receiver core alone consists of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, who is a tight end. Your defense has Khalil Mack on it, has Joey Bosa, has J.C. Jackson, has Asante Samuel Jr., has Derwin James. We're not questioning if this team is good. And we're honestly not questioning if Brandon Staley is a good coach. What we're questioning is, can Brandon Staley win those games? Or can you be a good coach, the last 3-4 minutes of a game, a close game? And time, and example after example after example has shown that he is unable to do so. Mind you, this Tennessee Titans team isn't the best. You have Ryan Tannehill, who was horrible just the week before. Yes, you have Derrick Henry. You have Treylon Burks. You also have DeAndre Hopkins. But there's not much good to this team. Or there's, as a team wise, the Tennessee Titans aren't that good. So this should be a layup. There should be no reason why the Chargers are 0-2. But yet again, going back to, I'm not even going to, because people want to go back to, of course, last year in the playoffs where, Trevor Lawrence threw 4 interceptions in the first half and the Chargers were up huge and then they ultimately lost. I'm going to go as far back as week 1 where Justin Herbert and this team was in a shootout with the Dolphins and ultimately lost because of poor decision making in the last few minutes of the game and poor play calling in the last few minutes of the game because of Brandon Staley. That seat is hot, like Disco Inferno hot for Brandon Staley, because I don't know how long, or I don't know how you can have a team this good and continuously. First of all, have a team that's good and be 0-2, and also have a team that's good and continuously. I'm not saying they lose every time, but they lose those close games. I mean, let's go back. Let's go back. What, 2 years ago when they were in the play, or they had the game away to being in the playoffs against the Raiders, and they lose to the Raiders. And Derek Carr, where all you had to do was go for the tie. They couldn't even do that. If they would have went for the tie, or if they would have got the tie, both to end the Raiders wanted to do the tie. They wanted to go for the tie, but the Chargers called timeout for some reason. Lost. They lost last year in the playoffs after thoroughly dominating a team the first half. The Jaguars the first half. Brandon Staley's seat is disco inferno hot. I promise you that. And I don't know what the the Chargers organization is as far as firing people in the middle of the season, especially after 2 weeks. I arguably wouldn't do that, but this trend has gone on longer than just this season, or it didn't just start these first 2 games. There is a rap sheet of moments where Brandon Staley as a head coach has put his team in tough positions, going forward on fourth down going forward on fourth down in the opposing team's territory. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing? Like I said, the other narrative and the other conversation is centered around Justin Herbert, and how Justin Herbert also is on the hot seat. Now, of course, he's not going to lose his job or anything, but Justin Herbert was one of the few, well, let me say, of the many young quarterbacks that got paid this summer. And as a talent, we know how good Justin Herbert is as a talent. As a talent, he is one of the best quarterbacks in football as a talent. But like I talk about a lot, man, sports is not played on paper. You can be the most talented person in the world. You know what? Let me give you an example. You know who was one of the most talented basketball players we've ever seen in the NBA? Just sheer talent. Josh Smith. When we talk about athleticism, when we talk about defensive ability, when we talk about just build, when we just talk about, what he can do offensively, what he's capable of doing defensively, shooting the ball at times, Josh Smith was one of the most talented players in the NBA has ever seen. Now, you're probably thinking, Josh Smith, excuse me, why are you thinking that? Because what did Josh Smith accomplish in the NBA? Nothing. Josh Smith was just another NBA guy that was forgotten once he left the league. You can say the same thing for Monte Ellis. One of the most talented players, skilled players we've ever seen. Did absolutely nothing in the league. You can say the same thing for someone like J.R. Smith if he never won a championship with LeBron James. What he did in Denver was incredible. What he did in New York was incredible. Nothing. I know he won Sixth Man of the Year, but outside of that, nothing. What I'm saying, and let's bring it back to Justin Herbert. We need to start seeing, not only in the same thing you can say about Deshaun Watson, we need to start seeing the return on that, the return on that contract, and we need to start seeing Justin Herbert be put in that or put himself in that category. And when I say that category, I mean Justin Herbert has the talent to be in the Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow when he's Joe Burrow. He has the talent to be in that group. But it's almost blasphemous to put him in that group because he has accomplished nothing compared to what a Patrick Mahomes and even a Joe Burrow this early in his career has. Hell, even a Lamar Jackson. He hasn't accomplished half the stuff that Lamar Jackson has accomplished. And people to this day think that Lamar Jackson can't even throw the ball. The conversation around this Chargers team is starting to get much, much louder, or the questions are starting to be more glaring, because you have to ask yourself, how is it that a coach can continue to be? No one thinks Brandon Staley is a bad coach. They just think he can't finish games, and he puts his teams in bad situation time and time again. No one thinks Justin Herbert is a bad quarterback. It's just, with a quarterback as talented as him, why does he have absolutely nothing to show for it? And why is it that, as good as you are, it is overtime, because you go into overtime, the Chargers had the ball first and did nothing. Yeah, the Chargers had the ball first and did nothing with it. 3 and out, I believe. And you have Justin Herbert, when you can look at the stats, 27 for 41, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. That looks good. But that right there is the Chargers in a nutshell. It looks good. The Chargers look like they should be the best team in football. They look like they should be that top echelon team. This team looks like they should be in contention for a Super Bowl. But in reality, this team is 0-2. This team has a head coach that continuously puts them in bad situations. And this team has a quarterback, as great as he can be, still has those moments, more than we'd like to really talk about, that he comes up short against the... And I'm not here bad-mouthing the Titans. I don't think the Titans are going to be that good of a team, but they did what they were supposed to do against the Chargers. It's just, the final thing I'll say about the Chargers is this. They continue to lose the same way. Like, have a really, probably the better quarterback. When we talk about who would you pick right now, Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa, most people would do Justin Herbert. But one of those teams is 0-2. One of those quarterbacks is 0-2. One of those quarterbacks is 2-0. Until Brandon Staley starts winning these close games more regularly than he is, and until we start seeing the talent of Justin Herbert shine more and more, we're going to continue to question that contract that Justin Herbert just signed, and ultimately this team. As great as the Chargers are, what are they really doing? Nothing. Speaking of doing nothing, the next game I want to talk about is the Washington and Broncos game. Shouts out to the Washington Commanders for not only being 0-2, or 2-0, I'm sorry, but for beating the Denver Broncos 35-33. We know about that the Hail Mary that was at the end of the game for Russell Wilson. Ultimately, first of all, you bat the ball down. I don't know why you're batting it up. or I don't know why you're trying to catch it. You just bat the ball down. But I digress. The Broncos completed the Hail Mary. They just didn't complete the 2-point conversion. Some people would say that it was a pass interference. I would say, did they call it on the field? I don't know. But the conversation around this game is obviously centered around the Denver Broncos being 0-2. So before I get there, let me shout out the Washington Commanders. Sam Howell has looked incredible. There are times where he does look like a younger quarterback, don't get me wrong, but 27 for 39, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brandon Robinson, the running back position, has been incredible. Terry McLaurin probably had the catch of the day. Well, no, Chris Olave probably had the catch of the day, but Terry McLaurin had one of the best catches of the day. The touchdown catch that he had. This team looks good, man. Now, yes, the problems that plagued them week one, the problem that's plagued them for a while is still there. The offensive line is not good. Sam Howell was running for his life a lot of times this game. And the secondary isn't the best. The secondary kept allowing wide open receivers. But the defensive front, bro, I'm happy that Chase Young finally came back from injury, and he looked incredible. And, of course, Deron Payne, he was wrecking the entire game. Montez Sweat looked really good. Jonathan Allen looked really good. Cameron Curl, he looked okay until the end. It was a good overall team win. Now, the issues that still plague them are still plaguing the Washington Commanders, but I'm liking that Sam Howell, even though he doesn't, he has his moments where he looks god awful, he's not letting those moments stop him. He's not letting those moments get to him like a lot of young quarterbacks could. And this defense, the highlights of the Washington team are got them 2 wins. I'm not going to go as far as say that this is a championship team. I'm not even going to go as far as say this is a playoff team, because I need that offensive line to be much better, and I definitely want to see more of Sam Howell. I mean, because you did beat. You were in a dogfight against Arizona, and you did beat the Broncos. We'll talk about in a second. But shouts out to the Washington Commanders for beating the Broncos 35-33. Now, I said going into this topic that the conversation for this game is centered around the Denver Broncos. And not in the sense that you would think. Especially after last year. Going into the season and the Denver Broncos being 0-2. What do you think the conversation or the reasoning would be that this team is 0-2? You'd probably say because of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was horrible last year, and you'd think that of a team that had a horrible quarterback last year is 0-2, you would think it's probably because of the quarterback, correct? And rightfully so, bro. That's what I thought it would be. I thought that if the Denver Broncos were going to start off slow or we're going to start off bad, it's because Russell Wilson is truly gone. And the Russell Wilson that we're used to in Seattle, outside of the last year in Seattle, is just no more. I do think that's the case, at least the latter part, saying that I think Russell Wilson, I don't think he should be considered a top tier quarterback anymore. I don't think he should be considered a bottom tier quarterback either. And I will say that shockingly, the Denver Broncos have one of the best offenses, and Russell Wilson has been one of the best offensive players in football this year. I know, again, I understand it's two games, but he's been one of the best offensive players in the league. But I thought going into the season, if they were to struggle, it was going to be because of him and his offense sputtered. That has not been the case at all. In fact, it's been the complete opposite. Russell Wilson has been very good this year. No, he's not, Legion of Boom, going to the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson, nah. But Russell Wilson has been light years better than he was last year. The issue with this team has been their defense. The Denver Broncos, they can't stop a nosebleed. And this is the same defense that has Patrick Surtain II, and that has Justin Simmons, and that has Demaris Matt. Like, this team has Randy Gregory. It can't get a stop. We saw that against the Raiders, and we saw that on Sunday against Washington. And if it wasn't for this team was up, I think 21-7 or 21-3, I think, and lost 35-33. And honestly, they only got that touchdown because of a Hail Mary at the end. So the schedule, it would have been worse. I'm not saying that Sean Payton's tenured has looked bad, because again, it's only 2 games. But he did start the first game on an onside kick. But what I will say is, the issues that the Denver Broncos are dealing with right now, you never would have thought they would be dealing with the personnel that they have. And the issues that they thought they would be having, i.e. Russell Wilson playing bad, they're not having. Because Russell Wilson has been one of the best offensive players in football, surprisingly, if you look at the stats. I mean, he threw for 308 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know he had 1 interception, but I'm not saying that all, there's a bunch of 0-2 teams. Again, we talked about the Chargers, we talked about the Broncos, talked about the Bears, the Bengals we'll talk about in a second. There's a bunch of 0-2 teams, and I'm not saying that the season's over. But what I'm saying is it's very tough to start your season behind the 8 ball pretty much. And that's what you're doing, putting yourself in 0-2 hole. And on top of that, your defense is supposed to be your calling card, has been bad, to say the least. So we'll see. I don't need to talk about this game for long. Shouts out to the Baltimore Ravens for beating the Cincinnati Bengals 27-24. Lamar Jackson looked really good, 24 for 33, 237 yards. We know what the Ravens are. They're a smash mouth team. Gus Edwards had 10 carries for 62 yards. Lamar Jackson carried the ball 12 times for 54 yards. If I were them, because of how they play, I would probably try to give Jonathan Taylor a call and see if you can try to make that trade. But Nelson Aguilar was really good. 5 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers, 62 yards. Mark Andrews, 45 yards and a touchdown. Odell Beckham did go down with an ankle injury, but they said it's not that serious. This Baltimore Ravens team is good, man. It's just I feel like I hope that this is the early stages, because there are times when the offense sputters mid game. The defense may come up short of sometimes, But this Ravens team does look good, and the offense looks much better under the new offensive coordinator. than is had with, Roman. It's been good, and there are times when it doesn't look good, but ultimately they're 2-0. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, I think a lot of it is just Joe Burrow's not ready. Joe Burrow, he hurt his calf, he hurt his hamstring in training camp, missed the entire training camp, missed the entire preseason, and he did just re-aggravate it. That's going to cause a lot of issues for this team. Defensively, they've been okay, but they haven't been groundbreaking, and the offensive line hasn't been the greatest either. Now, most of it is because of Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow, again, didn't do anything all training camp for preseason. So it's kind of hard for me to expect much from him. So I think that moving forward, I think maybe, I'm not going to say miss a game, but you need to, the last thing you want to do, especially as a quarterback position, is play with a hamstring injury. That's just not going to work, like, at all. Because you need your lower extremity, you need your body to throw the ball, like, the wide receiver Jamar Chase hasn't really been good. He went 5 receptions for 31 yards. T. Higgins, 8 receptions for 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Boyd, 53 or 52 yards. It just hasn't been special. And a lot of that is because of Joe Burrow's injury. Like I said, I'm not saying – I think Joe Burrow obviously can turn around. I do think that he needs his hamstring to heal. The problem with hamstrings is when it goes, it goes. We've seen that with basketball players. So I would just try to rest it as much as possible if you can. But, yeah, man, shouts out to the Ravens for beating the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know the Ravens is my Super Bowl pick, and they're looking really good right now. I don't know how they'll fare against maybe some of the top teams right now, but again, it's only week 2, so we'll see. Let's move forward. Another game, don't got to talk much about. No, that's a lie. The Bills beat the Raiders 38-10, and this game is a prime example why it's hard to put your faith. And it's hard to trust Josh Allen. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm also not saying that in a good way. Josh Allen, 31-37, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also carried the ball 3 times for 7 yards. Yo, he jumped right in. He was about 5 yards away from the end zone and jumped thinking, I don't know what you're doing, bro. You jumped right into the arms of the defender and got just pummeled. And the reason why it's hard for me to trust Josh Allen is because of games like this. This was an incredible game. You only missed 6 passes, 3 touchdowns, and he didn't overly rely on Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs only had 7 carries or 7 catches for 66 yards. Gabe Davis had 92 yards. Dalton Kincaid had 43 yards. James Cook had 36 yards receiving. The thing is, can you keep this up? Can this when Josh Allen is playing at his best, he is one of the best quarterbacks in football. That is not a question. But as you saw when you jump 5 yards from the end zone and you get tackled, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, we're gonna talk about this a little bit with Anthony Richardson again. Your best ability is availability, and if you keep doing reckless stuff like that, you see how good he can be. It's like, dude, come on, bro, get it together. And you beat a Raiders team that doesn't have much going for it outside of it has some names, like it has Jimmy Garoppolo, who couldn't throw over 200 yards. And you have Devontae Adams, who should be, I know he got hurt, but he should be okay. He had a touchdown. But outside of that, and Mason Crosby, but that's it. So, yeah, man, it's hard for me to really trust this Buffalo Bills team because your quarterback is as erratic and as reckless as Josh Allen can be. I understand that's how he plays, but that hasn't really resulted in winning as much as you want it to. So, but at his best, Josh Allen is still great, which is why it's kind of like it's kind of hard to put your faith in, is all I'm saying. There's two things that you can take out of this New York Giants and Arizona Cardinals game. Shouts out to the Giants for beating the Cardinals 31-28. But there's two things that you can take from this team. You can take the high approach. You can take the good approach in saying that Daniel Jones looked incredibly awful the first half and then came back and threw recorded 3 touchdowns, I think. He was incredible. Ended the game 321 yards, 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley did get hurt. He had an ankle sprain, but he finished with 63 yards, 17 carries, and 1 touchdown. And they ultimately came back and won. They were down huge. And they were down, I think, at least 20 points. And they came back and won 31-28. Like, it was great. Shouts out to the Giants getting their first win, and at least the second half of the game resembling the Giants that went to the playoffs last year and won a playoff game. But the other conclusion that you can come to is bad teams find a way to lose. More times than good teams, obviously. Understand that you always have the any given Sunday, any given night, any team could win. But for bad teams, they continuously find a way to lose. This is the second week in a row that the Arizona Cardinals was the best team on the field until the second half. They were the best team on the field against Washington until the second half, and they were the best team on the field against the Giants until the second half. Now, I understand that Kyler Murray's not playing and you have Joshua Dobbs. But you're up big against the Giants, and you can't close that. You can't close. You're up big against Washington, and you can't close. This is just yet another example of a bad team being bad. Bad teams find a way to lose. They find a way to lose. You see it more in college football, but in the NFL, yeah, bad teams find a way to lose all the time. Perfect example, the Arizona Cardinals that could be 2-0 right now. But because they find a way to lose every time, they're 0-2. Now, again, you can say, but Joshua Dobbs is our quarterback. Yeah, but again, you were up damn near 20 points, if not 20 points in the first half. Completely shutting out this Giants team, playing great defense. The Giants looked horrible. And then Daniel Jones turned into Patrick Mahomes. Daniel Jones turned into playoff Eli Manning, and then it was over with. Shouts out to the Giants for beating the Cardinals 31-28. I do want to give a shout out and talk about Bijan Robinson and this Atlanta Falcons team for shouts out to the Atlanta Falcons for beating the Green Bay Packers 25-24. Bijan Robinson for sure was the MVP of this game. 19 carries for 124 yards. I know Desmond Ridder, went 19 for 32, 237 yards. But, momentum play after momentum play, it was Bijan Robinson that looked very much like the player that a lot of people, I think including myself, thinks is going to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He looks like a seasoned vet right out the gate, and I think that's indicative of what he's done. Even though they're 2-0, what he's done these first 2 weeks. Desmond Ridder looks really good. He doesn't have to do much, and that's the beauty of it because you have a Bijan Robinson. He doesn't have to do much. Kyle Pitts only had 2 receptions for 17 yards. Jesus. But shouts out to this team, man. And for the Packers, I'm not going to put this one mostly on. I'm not going to put this on Jordan Love. He didn't play the best. He only had 151 yards, but he did have 3 touchdowns. I'm going to put this mainly on the defense. The defense this game was horrible. It was putrid. There was multiple times when Drake London got the best of Zaire Alexander. It just wasn't. The defense really let the Green Bay Packers down this game. But shouts out to Bijan Robinson for being the best player on the field, and shouts out to the Atlanta Falcons for being the Green Bay Packers. Also, in the kind of the same light about the Josh Allen thing, the Indianapolis Colts beat the Texans 31-20. Let me tell you, bro, Anthony Richardson looked incredible. Just the small, he didn't play much because he got hurt yet again and went into concussion protocol yet again. But he finished with only 56 passing yards, 33 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. He looked like he was going to have himself a day until he got hurt. And Gardner Minshew came in and had 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss, 88 yards or 88 rushing yards for a touchdown. They were good. But like I said last week, and I'm probably going to continue to say throughout his career, Anthony Richardson needs to, and Trevor Lawrence even said it, bro. You have to protect yourself. At the end of the day, if you do not protect yourself, you will get your head, you'd get up out of here. Like that's what, and we'll talk about Bryce Young in a second. I think that the one of the biggest learning curves for rookies in general is understanding how fast your opponent is, especially offensive quarterbacks, man. Offensive quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks. I think it's a steep learning curve to understand that. Most of these defensive players are the fastest players on the field, outside of maybe the running backs or the wide receivers. These defensive backs, these cornerbacks are fast. And when you were Anthony Richardson, a star stud at Florida, you probably were the fastest player on the field most times. That's not the case in the NFL. You obviously were probably the best player in general on the field. That's not the case in the NFL. And I think that's why I think Anthony Richardson really needs to protect himself more, because I'm not trying to take away one of his powers, which is, of course, is using his legs, but I just don't want him to shorten his career because he doesn't have or he's not mindful of how good these players can be. You know what I'm saying? So, and how fast and how hard they can hit. But shouts out to the Colts for beating the Texans, man. CJ Stroud, he was okay, but again, it's going to take a while. He threw for 384 yards. It's going to take a while for these young quarterbacks. And usually when you're a young quarterback drafted high, you're usually drafted on a bad team. So I don't see much winning in their future, but CJ Stroud looked good. Anthony Richardson looked good until he got hurt. Shouts out to them. Also want to congratulations. Well, the Seattle Seahawks beat the Lions 37-31. Geno Smith, bro. They were starting. I told you last episode, man. They were starting to write was last year a fluke columns for Geno Smith. He looked last week. He looked horrible, and he looked more like he's done majority of his career. And I understand why people will question, well, was last year a thing, or was it just an anomaly, or But on Sunday, he looked great. Now, there were times where he had some head scratching, like, "Dope, what are you doing, Geno?" But threw for 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked really good, and he was the main reason why this Seattle team won. So shouts out to Seattle for beating the Lions 37-31. Turn up for you. Oh boy. I don't want to push the panic button because, again, it's only 2 weeks in. And you've only played one game with Travis Kelce, obviously. But I'm starting to get close for my finger touching the panic button for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know you're going to say, but wait, the Kansas City Chiefs did just beat the Jaguars 17-9. But this is yet another game where the issues for the Kansas City Chiefs rear its ugly head again. Now, it didn't cost them because there were multiple times where the Jaguars were in scoring position and ultimately didn't punch it in. And there was multiple times where their wide receivers were wide open and had nothing but grass and opportunity in front of them, and they dropped the ball. But the issues that plagued them week one reared its ugly head again for the Chiefs, and that was they don't really have a number one or two number two receiver. And when I say number two receiver, their number one obviously is not a receiver. It is Travis Kelce. But Sky Moore had an okay game. He had 3 receptions for 70 yards. Justin Watson had 62 yards. Kadarius Toney had 35. Noah Gray had, 38. They don't have a reliable wide receiver core. They have a bunch of names outside of Travis Kelce. And I thought that was going to doom them, or that doomed them week one, and is dooming them, or it almost was their downfall week two. And their offensive line. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs spent the most money in the NFL, I believe, on the offensive line this offseason. They gave their tackle like $70 million, I believe. And they benched him. And their offensive line has been horrible. I'm not going to say their entire offensive line. Their tackles, right and left tackle, has been horrible. Boy, let me tell you, when you spend that much money, you expect more of a return, and they have not done that at all. It's been pretty bad for them. Now, as great as Patrick Mahomes can be, even with all that, he still threw 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Travis Kelce, he did come out slow, but he did have a touchdown. The reason why I don't think this team is going to win a Super Bowl again, or this year, and not even make it to the AFC Championship, is because of the issues that we saw these first 2 weeks. Now, again, things can change. It's only week 2, but their wide receiver core, I don't know how that's going to do much changing. They can get better over time, and maybe Sky Moore can turn into who they think he's going to turn into. But again, man, it's going to be tough. And the craziest part about it is the weakness that has been a weakness for the Kansas City Chiefs for a while has been their defense. Their defense is their strongest point, especially with Chris Jones coming back. Now, yes, Patrick Mahomes is still their best player. Travis Kelce is still probably their second or third best player, but their defense is incredible. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is their best unit. And we're not used to seeing now, yes. Patrick Mahomes has had the luxury of having a dominant receiver. And I'm going to include Travis Kelce. Last year, you had Tyreek Hill. But now it's just a lot of question marks in that core. And until those question marks start getting answered, I have my doubts about this team. And the same thing, and especially their offensive line, especially the tackles. They benched the player that they gave the most money to this offseason. I will say shout out to them for restructuring Patrick Mahomes' deal, and now he's like the highest paid player because, I mean, obviously he should be. He's Patrick Mahomes, bro. Why would you not? Like, what are we talking about here? But, yeah, man. Yeah. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars had what was in prime position to win this game if it wasn't for some key drops from their receiving core. I mean, Christian Kirk had 110 yards, dropped 3 passes. Calvin Ridley was targeted 8 times, only caught 2 of them. You know, so Zay Jones was targeted 6 times and dropped 2 touchdowns. So, congratulations to the Chiefs. Moving forward, San Francisco beat the Rams 30-23. You can kind of go back and forth between who is the best team. Who you feel is the best team these 2 weeks in. To me, it's between the Cowboys and the 49ers. The biggest reason why I'll give the Cowboys the nod right now is because of how pedestrian I'll say this 49ers team looked on defense in week 2. Now, you are playing against a veteran quarterback in Matthew Stafford, but, I mean, you had Puka Nacua, shouts out to you, I think broke a rookie record or has the most, or first rookie to have back-to-back 100 yards, 15 catch games. He went for 147 yards. Tutu Atwell 77. This team, you know, no sacks. Oh, 1 sack. Yeah. I think that right now the best 2 teams in the NFC right now are the 49ers and the Cowboys. And Sunday didn't really prove much to me. I mean, Christian McCaffrey ran 20 times and 116 yards. He was incredible. Debo has 63 yards in the air, 38 on the ground. This team is good. And this team's going to be tough, especially when you have Christian McCaffrey running that much. Now, I do think that you want to try to even out that offensive output, meaning you don't really want Christian McCaffrey running 20 times, especially when you have the weapons that you have on this team. This is much different from the Jets because Brock Purdy can actually throw the ball. Unlike Zach Wilson. So I don't really think you'd want Christian McCaffrey running 20 times, especially against this Rams defense. But he did, and he was incredible. I just don't know if you want to make it a thing, especially when you have, you know, Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and Deebo Samuels on the outside. So, but hey, it won them the game. So shouts out to the 49ers. Miami looked incredible. Actually, they didn't look incredible. They definitely probably should have lost this game. If it wasn't the refs, let me say this. The refs weren't that good this weekend. I'll just be light about it. They definitely missed some tough calls. Like, I don't know how you can call back that 4th down play against with the Patriots. I don't know how you can call that short. It definitely looked like it was in, like, kind of clear as day. They missed a pass interference for Washington, possibly. They missed a pass interference for the Saints game, which we'll talk about in a second. I don't know, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. You shouldn't allow it to get to that point. The Dolphins beat the Patriots 24-17. Tua threw for 249 yards. Raheem Mostert ran for 121 yards. Tyreek Hill had 40 yards. Jalen Waddle had 86. I'm sorry. this Dolphins team is going to be tough, man. This is obviously one of those teams that are 2-0, and this Dolphins team, when they're playing like this, or of course this wasn't as good and as prolific as Week 1, obviously, but when they're firing on all cylinders, when they have Jalen Waddle doing Jalen Waddle things, when they have Tyreek Hill doing Tyreek Hill things, and you have Tua getting the ball, making smart, quick decisions, this Dolphins team is going to be tough. And I also will say, and this is yet another week where I'm starting to, I don't think Mac Jones is an elite quarterback. I don't think that at all. But I'm starting to see that Mac Jones is in desperate need of a number one receiver. He's kind of in that same realm that you put let me see. He's in that same realm that we've put Josh Allen in before he got Stephon Diggs, or Jimmy Garoppolo with now Devontae Adams, or Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill. I just think Mac Jones needs that number one receiver. He does not have his best receiver right now is Devontae Parker. And while Devontae Parker is cool, don't get me wrong, he's not a number one receiver. If you give Mac Jones a DeAndre Hopkins, if you give Mac Jones one of those top elite quarterback or wide receivers, I think that'll not only open his game up, I think it'll open up the offense for the Patriots. Like this team is so strapped for. It's so strapped because of the lack of explosive talent on this offense. The defense is still good, and I think that Mac Jones to throw the ball 42 times and not have a number one receiver, that should tell you a lot about this offense. This offense is not going anywhere without having a number one receiver. That's why receivers are so important. Like, imagine if you go out and get a T. Higgins. That's a potential number one receiver. Imagine if you go out and get someone like, I don't know, someone like a Terry McLaurin. That's a number one receiver. Or like if Mac Jones had a DK Metcalf, if Mac Jones had a Jamar Chase, if Mac Jones had a Tyreek Hill, things would be much different. But he doesn't, and to me, the Patriots had every opportunity to win this game. It's just you just don't have that explosiveness on the outside, especially when the Dolphins are having a bad game or a down game. So, shouts out to the Dolphins, but I just think Mac Jones is good enough, I don't think he's an elite quarterback, but I think that he has the opportunity to go up to that elite quarterback status if he just had a number one receiver, which he doesn't have. And I think that until then, this Patriots team will always be, one step behind. And Mac Jones, especially his progression, will always be one step behind because you don't have that relationship with a top-tier receiver. So, the last game I'm going to talk about, obviously, was the other game we saw on Monday Night Football, and that was the Saints beating the Panthers 20-17. This was a tough game to watch, bro. I'll be real with you, bro. This was not a good game. The more and more I'm watching, man, I like the Saints because of the weapons that Derek Carr has. Like, I like the Saints. The problem and issue with the Saints is, bruh, I get how good the Panthers defense is, but the Saints offense looks, it has moments of the big boom, or let me say it like this. They have those moments where they're just like flat, like boom, boom, boom. When you had Shaheed, when you have Chris Olave, when you have Mike Thomas, like they can hit you with big play after big play. But then if they're not hitting those big plays, now I am interested to see what happens when Alvin Kamara gets back. But this offense just looks man, it was hard to watch. Now you might be able to credit that to, of course, the defense of the Panthers, but I don't know. Derek Carr threw for 228, no touchdowns, one interception. It just didn't look good. This game was won mainly because of their defense being so good, and because you're playing against a rookie quarterback, who, like I said earlier in the show, it's going to be tough for rookie quarterbacks because they have a tough time seeing the field, and if they can see the field much better, then it's going to take time. And Bryce Young has to realize, he has to see the field much better. And I think Bryce Young, that's another team that I don't know what the hell happened with DJ Chalk, but Adam Thielen at this point of his career, to me, isn't really a number one receiver. I think there was a couple years in Minnesota where he was that, but I just don't think Adam Thielen is that anymore. And I think that, kind of like Mac Jones, Bryce Young would benefit greatly from a number one receiver. I don't think he has that in Jonathan Mingo or Adam Thielen or Hayden Hurst, who's a tight end, or DJ Chalk. I don't know. I just don't. I think that's another team, the Panthers, that would benefit from a number one receiver. But their defense is really good. That was probably one of the uglier games. That was one of the uglier games of the week, man. That was tough to watch. But shout out to the Saints for beating the Panthers. Tomorrow you have Thursday Night Football. I believe it's the Giants and the 49ers. I'm just leave that where it is. Let's go over to college for a second. We're done with the NFL. That was week 2 breakdown. Shouts out to Chris Olave for having probably the catch of the week. That's why I put it right there. Shouts out to him. And shouts out to you guys for staying with that. Of course, talking about college football, I have to talk about Colorado beating Colorado State. They beat them in double overtime. Colorado is now 3-0. They beat them 43-35. This is a rivalry game. And you know that teams get up for rivalry games. And that's why those are honestly some of the hardest games to predict in both college and in the NFL. Pretty much in any sport. Because rivalry games, everyone's up for that. Like it's almost a pick'em game. It doesn't matter who it is. It can be Alabama and Auburn. And Alabama, which we'll talk about in a second, Alabama can be having the best season they've ever had. But, it doesn't matter because it's a rivalry game. So Colorado State came in, bro. Shouts out to Braden Follier Nicholson. I'm sure I said your name wrong, bro. The quarterback. He and Torrey Horton was by far the best players on the field majority of the year. Majority of the game. Braden had 367 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 3 interceptions. And Torrey Holton had 133 yards. And Lewis Brown had 131. Like, they were just throwing the ball all over the place. And it seemed like until the end of the game, Colorado could not stop Colorado State. Like, it was just he did do Braden did throw 3 interceptions, but it just anything they wanted or anytime they needed a big play, they got it. It was crazy. Even Torrey Holton threw a 30-yard touchdown, like the wide receiver. I will address the cheap shot that Colorado State player, I forgot his name. He did a cheap hit on Travis Hunter. Definitely dirty, definitely had malice intent. Travis Hunter, I'm sorry, ultimately left the game. He was going to keep playing, but the doctor or the team doctor advised him not to. Went to the hospital. Turns out he has a lacerated liver. He'll be out for 3 weeks. That was a dirty play. And I understand that college and how you discipline players is much different than NFL. NFL, if that hit what happened in NFL, 9 times out of 10, homie's getting suspended for a game or two. I think he deserves to be suspended. There's no room for a play like that. There's no room. Because, at the end of the day, I understand it's a gladiator sport, and I understand that it's a collision sport that is football. But even knowing that and even knowing it's a rivalry, even understanding, back both sides were chirping majority of the week and even before the game, and you obviously want to beat your opponent, but you don't want to hurt anybody, and that's obviously what homie wanted to do with Travis Hunter. And I do think that Travis Hunter is one of their most, if not the most important player for Colorado, outside of course, Shedeur Sanders. So I think that homie, again, I don't remember his name. I'm not even going to go look for his name. I think he should be suspended because, again, it was a dirty hit. And not only was it such a dirty hit, but it ultimately resulted in a player getting hurt and now out for weeks with a lacerated kidney. And the way that he hit Travis Hunter, he could have done much, much worse. It was a blindside, cheap, dirty hit. So, and for the people that's saying, what if it was Travis Hunter, if the roles were reversed? Yes, we understand the difference between, a Caucasian player and a black player. We understand that. We understand how the rhetoric changes between a black player and a white player. We also understand how the rhetoric changes between a player that has more to lose and a player that has more hype compared to a player that doesn't. But who cares at this point? At this point, Travis Hunter is out 3 weeks because of a dirty hit from a player. And to me, that player should be out of here. I'm not saying kick him off the team. I'm not saying, but I do think that he should at least be suspended for at least a game or two. That's just me. When we talk about Heisman winners and we talk about what does it take to win a Heisman, every Heisman winner, every single one, has a Heisman moment. And what is a Heisman moment? A Heisman moment is a moment in the season where you demonstrated that you were the best player and you were the reason why your team won, or that play could not have been made from anyone else but you. That is what you consider a Heisman moment. Every single Heisman player has it. I'm not saying that Shedeur Sanders is going to win the Heisman. I still think Caleb Williams is still a good pick. Maybe Michael Penix. But I do think that if Shedeur Sanders does win the Heisman, they will look back at this game, and especially the end of the game and how overtime or both overtimes went. That was Shedeur Sanders' moment. He had to go, I think 98 or 95 yards in like a minute, and big play after big play after poised play, and that was the beauty of watching that game. How poised Shedeur Sanders looked. He looked like the most poised player on the field. Again, I'm not saying that he won the Heisman after beating Colorado State, but if he does ultimately win the Heisman, this will be considered a Heisman moment. The big play, the game time touchdown was the throw that he made and going for it on fourth down, and the two touchdown passes in overtime to the tight end. They won this game because of Shedeur Sanders. And this is also the same Shedeur Sanders that did not. The Colorado yeah, Shiloh Sanders, they would have lost. Because they had, what's his name, bro? It's Kamara. Muhammad Kamara was wreaking havoc. Muhammad Kamara of Colorado State was wreaking havoc on the Colorado offensive line. Shedeur Sanders got nothing. Like it was looking bad for Colorado. There was a time, especially when I think Colorado State went up, I think 10. I see it as over with. But again, those Heisman moments. Every person that wins a Heisman has those moments, and I think we will be able to look back and think, if Shedeur Sanders win the Heisman, they'll look at this Colorado State game, especially, with 1 minute left. I know they're down a touchdown. This was the moment. And shouts out to Colorado. Shouts out for beating Colorado State 43-35. I'm interested to seeing what these next 3 weeks look like. Because you play Oregon, who has a really good defense and one of the most prolific offenses in college football. Then you go and play USC, who has the reigning Heisman winner. And while the defense is not there, I want to see what Shedeur Sanders looks like standing next to a Heisman winner. And then the third game isn't that tough, but I do want to see what you look like. Also, not having Travis Hunter, I want to see what you look like, especially the defense. He plays both sides of the ball, which is incredibly important for this team. I want to see what they look like when I understand you can say TCU. TCU was a huge win. I'm not taking anything from that, but we're talking about 2 much better teams, at least this year, in Oregon and USC. So I want to see what they look like. And I don't, especially after seeing, I told you it was a rivalry game, so you never know. But especially how they looked against Colorado State, I don't know. I know that Oregon, going into this game, Oregon is a heavy favorite. I think that Oregon's going to win. I also think USC is going to win. But I am interested to see what Shedeur Sanders and this Colorado team looks like against competition that's a little more better than what they played. And I know you can look at TCU, but TCU lost a lot to the draft and just graduating last year. So we'll see. But shouts out. Another thing I want to talk about in college football is what the hell is going on in Alabama. We've seen Alabama struggle before. We've seen Alabama struggle, especially at the quarterback position. Alabama, for the longest, was not known to breed great quarterbacks. Now, I understand you can look at Jalen Hurts, you can look at Tua Tagovailoa, you can look at Mac Jones and say, like, bro, what are you talking about? But before then, the AJ McCarron, the teacher, like they didn't have the greatest run of quarterbacks. The thing that they had though was they always had a remarkable defense. They always had a running back or wide receiver, and whatever shortcomings they had at the quarterback position was fine. Because again, you have a Derrick Henry, you have a Mark Ingram, you have a Devontae Smith, you have a Julio Jones. Like you have a Will Anderson Jr. Like your defense, or there was a position that you had, T.J. Yeldon, that Trent Richardson. It does not matter what the quarterback is doing because you have a Hall of Fame talent, or not Hall of Fame. You have a NFL type talent somewhere else, or multiple positions currently on your team, and you had Nick Saban as the head coach. And Nick Saban has been, Nick Saban is kind of inarguably at this point the greatest college football coach of all time. So not having a quarterback, but you also have an NFL type defense or an NFL type receiving core or running back core, it didn't really matter what the quarterback was doing. Now you pair that with a Jalen Hurts, you pair that with Tua Tagovailoa, you pair that with a Mac Jones, then it's like, all right, like goddamn, you know what I'm saying? This is different. You can look at Alabama ultimately winning but struggling mightily against South Florida, and obviously a week ago losing to Texas. And you look at this quarterback room. You have Jalen Milroe, who started against Texas. You have Ty Simpson, and you have Tyler Buchner. I think Tyler came from Notre Dame. The reason why this is such a thing, such a story, and such a crazy thing to witness is because we're not used to seeing Alabama look like this. Now, yes, they've had quarterback situations, but this is the first time that I can remember that Alabama doesn't have a team that can overshadow weak or below average quarterback play. Now, no, I'm not saying that, the NFL quarterbacks that came from Alabama are below average. But what I'm saying is, those years when you had the A.J. McCarron, you also had incredible units. They don't have that now. And I think one of the worst things that Nick Saban could have done is bench Jalen Milroe after playing bad against Texas, because I guess he made his mistakes, but he's also proven that he should be starting. Tyler Buchner was god awful against Florida or South Florida, and so was Ty Simpson. Now, they ultimately won because South Florida is South Florida, but if they would have played a better team, like if they would have played possibly a Florida, maybe a Auburn, maybe a definitely an LSU, they would have lost. And this is the first time in a while that Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide doesn't have the team that can overshadow poor quarterback play. That's one of the biggest reasons why I don't have Alabama. I predicted Alabama to be in my Final Four. I don't think that's the case now, because of how sketchy this quarterback room is. And I do think that one of the worst things they could have done was bench Jalen Milroe, after the Texas game. Because it's like, you don't want to kill a player's confidence. I understand, he was a team sport and cheering the team on during South Florida. There was videos of it, of course, but this is a disaster. It's a disaster because the team as a whole isn't that good. And usually they have that player that you can look to be like, all right, well, we have a Derrick Henry, we have a Mark Ingram, we have a Trent Richardson, we have a Devontae Smith. We'll be all right. They don't have that now. And with the quarterback play in college, as great as it is, when you have LSU with a good quarterback, Florida State with a good quarterback, Colorado with a good quarterback, USC, Oregon, Alabama can't afford to have a bad quarterback, or can't afford to have a bad quarterback room. And I'm not saying that Jalen Milroe was bad, but when we put him against some of the top tier quarterbacks in college, he's not up there. And I just think that it's been a disaster how Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide has handled their quarterback room. It's just been a disaster. I think that is, along with their team not being that good, is going to ultimately cost them not just a spot, or not just the college football championship, but a spot in the playoffs. And honestly, I don't they have a tough. I mean, I don't. I see them losing at least 1 or 2 more times. And a 3-loss Nick Saban team is unheard of. But hey, that's how bad this quarterback room is. And not just that, because Jalen Milroe isn't terrible, but it's been handled horribly. So we'll see what takes place with that, or what comes out of that. The last topic of the day is the unpopular topic of the week, and the unpopular topic of the week. I want to talk to Damian Lillard for a second. You know, I had to sneak in a basketball topic. There was a Damian Lillard was doing a string of interviews, and the question. I don't remember. I think it was. I don't remember who it was. So I apologize to you, but I know that he was on a couple of podcasts, and one of the podcasts asked him, "Would you join Golden State?" And he said he would never join Golden State. He doesn't want to win that way. He will lose for the rest of his career before winning with Golden State. And the unpopular topic of the day is ultimately about winning. You see, it's always the how that people have a problem with. That's one of the biggest. Nobody questions the player. They question the how. The how is what divides fans, is what divides players. It's always the how. There's not a person on this earth that watches basketball that would question how good Kevin Durant is as a player. People know how good Kevin Durant is as an offensive talent. People understand that Kevin Durant is one of the greatest offensive talents we've ever seen in the NBA. But it's the how. People hate how he won his only 2 championships. And that, of course, is going from OKC to Golden State after Golden State ultimately beat them in the conference championship. He ultimately then goes on to win 2 straight championships with Golden State. And people then create what they create about Kevin Durant. But it's the how. If the how doesn't match what people want, they hate it. My thing is, why should the how matter in certain situations? No, not in certain. Why should the how matter? I don't think that there's any question that Damian Lillard, at least offensively, is one of the greatest point guards we've ever seen. When we talk about shooting and just an offensive repertoire and late game execution and just being an offensive savant, you can't build that big of a list without having Damian Lillard in it. You can argue that Damian Lillard is arguably a top 10 point guard to ever play in the league. But what Damian Lillard is speaking to is the how. How is it? I pulled up Damian Lillard's stats. Since 2012, when he was drafted, Damian Lillard has averaged 19 points, 21 points, 21 points, 25, 27, 28, 26, 30, 29, 24, and 32 points. Damian Lillard has been out the first round, I think, been out the first round, I think once in his career. Maybe twice. For sure once. Damian Lillard has been to the conference finals once, I believe, and they got swept. Better stat. Damian Lillard has never beaten Steph Curry in the playoffs. You see, Damian Lillard, I feel, is so hung up on the how and not hung up on the reality. Why does Damian Lillard want to go to Miami? Damian Lillard wants to go to Miami so that he can have a better opportunity to win. But because that how seems better than the Golden State how, Miami's how is okay. How did you win? Because I went to Miami. I tried as hard as I could to win a championship in Portland. And then once I saw that their direction was not the same as mine, I wanted to win. I wanted to go somewhere else that aligns with my goals. How does going to Golden State not align with your goals? Now look, I'm not telling him I'm not saying Damian Lillard should go to Golden State. I don't think Damian Lillard would be a good fit in Golden State, honestly. What the unpopular topic of the day is, we should not worry about the how. As much as did he accomplish what he wanted to accomplish? Damian Lillard, to me, is going to fall in that category of players, as great as they are, to never win a championship. He's going to fall in that Charles Barkley, Carmelo Anthony, John Stockton, Dominique Wilkins. He's going to fall in that club. Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter. And the problem with it is Damian Lillard is arguably better than all of them. But he, along with a lot of basketball fans, are so hung up on the how. Because think about it. What if Kevin Durant never won a championship? How would we view him? Would we view him the same way that we view him now? Or would we view him the same way we view maybe a Russell Westbrook? Or will we view him the same way we view maybe a James Harden? Or will we view him the same way we view a Carmelo Anthony? All great players, but we view them differently. We view Kevin Durant differently than Russell Westbrook. Honestly, we view Kyrie Irving differently than we view Russell Westbrook. The last thing I'm going to say is this. What is the ultimate goal in sports? It's to win a championship. I understand that, money is involved in this business, and of course, you also want to provide for your family. But when you play the sport, the ultimate goal is to win it all. And when I hear Damian Lillard say, I will never go to Golden State, I will lose every season before I win in Golden State, tells me that he is hung up on the how. Because best believe, he is trying to do exactly what Kevin Durant did. You realize that the team that you're currently on is not good enough to win a championship. But because they didn't like the team Kevin Durant went to, they didn't like the how, that has forever changed how people look at Kevin Durant. But because Damian Lillard put up all these stats and ain't been out the first round once in his career. But because he wants to go to Miami, but not Golden State. We appreciate that how, but not Golden State. Let's not be hung up on the how. Let's be more hung up on, did they do it or not? That's the unpopular topic of the day. Who cares if Golden State? I think that Damian Lillard will have a better shot winning a championship in Golden State than he would in Miami. I mean, playing alongside, I don't think he should do it, but playing alongside, and I don't think he should do it because the fit. I don't know the fit. I still want to see what the fit looks like with Chris Paul. So fit-wise, I don't think it fits. But if it were to fit, why would you not want to win a championship with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, but you rather lose every year, which you've been doing before winning in Golden State. But if that's the case, why go to Miami? All I'm saying. Let's not be so hung up on the why. And there you have it. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, links in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I am trying to build this community that we are building. I appreciate all of you guys. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend if you appreciate the Unpopular Podcast, if you like the Unpopular Podcast, and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you have subscribed, send it to somebody, tell a friend, and let's try to build this community as big as we can. So I appreciate you guys. Also, follow the socials, follow the Instagram, follow the TikTok. I took a couple days off from the socials as far as posting reels and stuff, but we are back, and that's what I'll be doing. I interact with the people that comment on my social media. That's me commenting, so keep it respectful and we'll have a conversation. If you don't agree with someone, let me know and we'll talk about it. But also, same thing for YouTube. If you don't agree with it, leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it. Just keep it respectful. And there you have it, man. I appreciate you guys, and until next time, much love.